Hello, I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and you're listening to Well, Hello Anxiety, a podcast where we end the struggle with anxiety and build our toolkit of practical skills to thrive. There's no question that we are happiest when we are in the moment. Even if we actually have something amazing to look forward to, something exciting like a birthday or a celebration, the science is actually really clear that when we shine the spotlight of our attention on what we're actually doing, or as somebody once said to me, put our heads where our hands are, we're actually happier than at any other time. But it's so often easier said than done. And this is why today I have invited back one of my favourite guests, Carly Taylor, to talk to us about rumination and to really talk to us about how we think and the way we think, and to help us with some practical strategies, of course, which is what we love here on the podcast, is to have some tools to add to our toolkit. Carly works with people who struggle with overthinking, with rumination and their emotions, and people who really just need support and strategies to make change. She is halfway through her Masters of Counselling and is passionate about helping people to live well each day, even when life throws the inevitable challenges. Her approach is centred around living a life based on values and purpose, as opposed to a life dictated by thoughts and emotions. So, Carly, you are the perfect guest for me to talk to about this topic today of rumination. Thank you so much for joining us today.
So good to be here, and I'm really excited about being in the studio. Like, everything's done over Zoom now, isn't it? And it's handy that it's done over Zoom. But to be in a studio and for you and I to be in the same room and have that connection, it's I'm really looking forward to this chat.
I know, we've got this whole space, and we could honestly, listeners, if Carly and I really wanted to, we could sit here all afternoon.
Yes, we could.
But we won't. We won't, because we know that you have other things to do. But we're sitting opposite one another, and it's such a joy. So, and this topic, actually one of my beautiful listeners wrote in and asked for me to record something specifically on rumination, and I immediately thought of you. And so I wonder if you could start by telling us what rumination actually is.
Yeah, so rumination, well, the American Psychological Association, their different definition of rumination is obsessional thinking involving excessive, repetitive thoughts or themes that interfere with other forms of mental activity. And I could expand on that because it interferes with activity in general as well. And I think if anybody is struggling with rumination, they would really relate to that. I have another explanation of rumination, and this is by somebody very, very close to me.
Yeah.
So my son, Oscar, who's 13 now, he had intense rumination, was about a year and a half ago. And I'll put some context around it. But I asked him last night, I said, what was it like for you? How would you describe it? And he said it was debilitating. He said it was exhausting. He couldn't focus on anything else because of these intrusive thoughts. And he said it was like, he described as an alter ego. So I kind of interpreted that as there was a part of him that had just taken over, but it wasn't him. He was he was able to recognise that. And to put a bit of context around that, Oscar was diagnosed. He was, it was the year before last, so it was 2022. He was in year 6 at primary school, and he was doing really, really well. Like, as you know, Jodi, he's into his sport, part of his identity. He was school captain. He won an award at the end of year 6 for having good character, which we were kind of most proud of.
Yes.
So look, he'd had more achievements, my son, than I probably have in my lifetime, I must say, by the age of 11. But he started to go downhill, and he went from being a very happy-go-lucky, positive kid, and started feeling stressed. And we were wondering what on earth was going on. He started being really stressed. He started not wanting to go to school, which was very unusual for him. And the other thing that happened was that he stopped growing. he'd always been in the 95th percentile of his class. All of a sudden, his peers were sort of rising above him in height. And we thought maybe it's something to do with puberty. Kids are all different, develop at different stages. But he was growing hair everywhere. He was shaving at 11. He had hair on his back, on his armpits, everywhere.
Yeah.
So around September, we took him to a GP. And the GP said, look, I'm sure it's all fine, but go and see a paediatrician. And by the time we got into the paediatrician, Oscar had started putting on weight, and there was no explanation for this. And he also his face had started swelling. It was like this moon face. So luckily for us, my husband Paul is an expert on stress, and he could see that cortisol could be the problem here. Now, Oscar was exercising a lot, and as you know, with excessive exercising, that causes stress on the body, which could raise cortisol. So we were thinking maybe he's exercising too much. Maybe he's stressed about school and being school captain and the responsibilities there, which all this stuff is going through our head. A lot of uncertainty there. We took him to the paediatrician. And what we did is I took a photo of him 6 months prior and compared him to where he was today, which I'm so glad that I did, because you wouldn't look at Oscar if you didn't know him and think you're overweight.
Yes.
But he could see the progression of the weight gain. So he again thought it was maybe a developmental problem. He wanted to watch and wait for 3 months. My husband Paul literally said, I'm not leaving this office until you test his cortisol levels.
Yeah.
So we did. Turns out his cortisol levels were high. He was referred to an endocrinologist at Monash Children's. We got in 3 weeks later, between Christmas and New Year, had multiple tests, and it turned out his cortisol was 15 times higher than normal. So this poor kid had been living with these high cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone.
Yes.
And then he was diagnosed with a very, very rare disease called Cushing's disease. If people have heard of Cushing's, that's probably related to horses, because it's quite common in horses and dogs.
Right.
But 1 in 5 million kids are diagnosed with Cushing's. It's very, very hard to diagnose. So Oscar's mental health started to decline, and he became, because he knew that weight gain was a side effect of Cushing's, and because he was such a fit kid, and Paul and I are both nutritionists, so he probably knew a lot more about nutrition and food than most 11 and 12-year-old kids.
Yes.
So he became obsessed with calories and food. And this was the rumination that he had. So everything became around food. And it was so debilitating for him. It affected his social life. He became very, very withdrawn. He got he was never diagnosed, but what we could see was OCD.
Yeah.
Where he was in the kitchen a lot. He was organising. We have a chocolate drawer. I'm going to admit this. We have a chocolate drawer.
I love this. And just before you go on, I just want to remind listeners, so Paul Taylor has been a guest on the podcast, and he wrote Death by Comfort. And so you may have listened to that episode, and if you haven't, go back and listen. But and Carly's been a guest a couple of times before. And so I know Carly and Paul, and Carly and I are friends. And so I think listeners will appreciate kind of learning that from a family who really know and understand nutrition inside and out, and obviously care very deeply about health and well-being as we do. And obviously with the deep knowledge, understanding and care about health and well-being in the family. I love that you're about to tell us about your chocolate drawer. So please continue. Please continue.
So the chocolate drawer is mainly dark chocolate. I will say that. But yeah, occasionally there's other things. Paul actually has quite a sweet tooth.
Okay. Dobbing him in.
Yeah, I love it. Dobbing him in. But with Oscar and the rumination that he had, the only thing that he could control were his actions. So he developed these rituals. And so the chocolate drawer was always immaculate. The fridge was was always clean and nothing expired in it, everything. And the kitchen, we used to call the kitchen's been Oscared, because he would clean up the kitchen.
Right.
And so it was, I remember him saying to me, I just don't feel like a kid anymore. He had said, there's like this dark grey cloud over me. And he said, I just want to be a kid again. So that's how intense it was. So with Cushing's disease, it's a tumour on the pituitary gland, and it's a functioning tumour. And what it does is it affects the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenal glands. And what the tumour did was take over the job of the pituitary gland, and it was releasing ATCH, which then tells the adrenals to produce cortisol. But there was nothing telling the adrenals to switch it off. So it was this continual. We all have high, cortisol goes up in the morning and then it sort of tapers off the end of the day. Oscar's was constantly high all the time. And the reason I wanted to mention this is because as soon as that tumour was taken out, it was almost a change in his personality the next day. It was amazing and a relief, but also fascinating that all of a sudden these thoughts that he had just started to dissipate. So I was looking at some research to show the link between high cortisol and rumination. And there is definitely a link because, as you will know, high cortisol is a stress response. And what it does is it causes the part of the brain it affects the executive capacity of the brain. So the ability to focus, ability to plan, reason, all that stuff. Yeah. And your attention just kind of hones in on this one thing. And so anyone who is super stressed, is going through a stressful time or chronic stress who has high cortisol, it makes sense that rumination comes with that. Yes. So I kind of wanted to tell the story about Oscar just to link it to that it's not just about psychology, because psychology can drive physiology, but physiology can also drive psychology.
Yes, it can. It can. And I remember when we first spoke about this, when you first shared with me that Oscar was having these challenges and you were still trying to work out what was happening. I remember bumping into you guys and your family at the cafe in Mount Eliza and looking at Oscar and noticing a change. And at that point, you had understood exactly what was sort of at the root of the change that you'd been witnessing. And I can see that knowing the way that you think and what's really important to you, obviously it must have been, I can't even imagine how difficult it was parenting Oscar through this with your own rumination of what was happening and worry as well. And I'd love to talk about the difference between the two. So you're kind of really, immersed in this worry and stress and what's going to come of all of this kind of thinking. But also now kind of with a little bit of distance, you're able to kind of look at it from the point of view of, well, this all makes perfect sense, and to kind of pull it apart a little bit and share kind of those reflections with us. So I thank you, because I feel like I'm welling up, like I feel teary, and you've done so well. But any parent listening will know that we lose our breath, our stomachs just fall away when, something's wrong with our kids. And so I really appreciate you sharing it. Thankfully, he's well now and he's back to his old self, and for you to be able to reflect and share kind of what you observed on the other side of all of this is really powerful. And this idea that it's not just about kind of what we think, it is so much more to the picture. So I thank you for that. The emotion that came up when Oscar was telling me about his experience, he welled up. Yeah. And so it's still raw, even though the tumour came out March the 8th last year. Which would be 2023.
Yeah,
yes.
2023.
Oh, so it's a year since the surgery.
Yeah.
Over a year, yeah.
And he is doing so well, but you talk to him about that time and the emotion comes up. It's still quite raw. That's how intense it was.
Yeah.
But it was definitely one of the worst periods of my life.
Yeah.
But I've done so much work on myself, and I'm sure you're the same. So all the study that I have done, for me to be able to coach others, I have to apply everything, all these tools and strategies to myself. So I feel I had grown so much. But the other thing I feel like is that we were in training for that.
Yes.
Like, that was the biggest reality slap that we've ever had.
Yeah.
So it was difficult. It was painful. I cried a lot.
A lot, yeah.
But the thing looking back on it that I guess I'm most proud of is that I was able to experience all that and accept the emotion that came up, but really turn my attention to what I could control. And so what I found is I would have these periods of on my own. I never cried in front of Oscar, but of just this like helplessness. And then I would pick myself up and I would go, right, who do I need to be in this situation?
Yeah.
And I've actually got a journal entry. I use my journal a lot, and I have a journal entry that says, I want this to be a distant memory, and I want to look back at this time and know that we did everything that we could, that we were the best that we could be in this situation. And I do. I feel like I can look back. We're both getting emotional.
Yeah. It just shows such grace and such strength, but also, like you say, your ability to draw on everything that you've learned, that you continue to learn as a lifelong learner and in your Masters of Counselling and the insights and skills and ideas and the science that you're uncovering and the knowledge that you're developing. It's so hard to do. It's it's natural to want to fall apart, and you have your moments, and you said that you did that. You had your moments outside of your time with Oscar where you were able to really express how you felt, but there were other times where you were able to practice what it is that you share with others and put it to the test, I suppose, under the hardest of circumstances. And to have that journal entry and then to be sitting here, reflect that we're on the other side. And this is, I guess, not this moment here together recording, but this is a time in your life that you were looking to, this idea that it's a memory, it's in the past, we've come through it, and that you did everything that you could to support him and each other, and you have a daughter, Kira, as well, through the whole journey. So honestly, it's obviously taught you a lot as a person, but also as a practitioner.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's easy to apply these tools and strategies when things are going well.
Yes.
The hardest part when there's a challenge, whether it's a small challenge or a big challenge. But I believe that we all need the tools and the strategies to train ourselves, so when we are hit hard, which we all will, there will always be a loved one that will die. Someone will get sick. Life is not going to run smoothly, and we're not going to be skipping through the roses every day. So I'm a firm believer that if we can train, then when those challenges hit us hard, we're prepared for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I believe that's what happened.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. And so coming back to rumination, which you know better than perhaps you'd like to.
Yes.
Can you tell us the difference between rumination and worry, please?
Yeah, so rumination is the part of the brain that is about the self.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that autobiographical part of the brain, and it is also about past events. So, and there's a spectrum of rumination, of course. But rumination there's been a lot of studies on depressive rumination.
Yeah.
So a lot about past events that we bring into the present moment. So it could be a memory, or it could be a feeling of shame. It could be a narrative of, negative self-talk. And that's the one that comes up for me a lot. If something happens in the present moment that validates this negative self-talk that I have of not being good enough, that's my big one. It's like you're not good enough. Then I can easily start going down that rumination spiral or go, see, well, this has happened. It's like, I don't consciously think that, but that's kind of what happens. And then you start thinking about it. So a lot of it is about the past and the present. Worry tends to be about future. But then you can still ruminate about what if this happens. And in Oscar's situation, there were so many what ifs. I mean, there's so much uncertainty. And as you know, as humans, our minds like certainty. And when there's not, we scramble for the answers. And that's when we can start to really worry. So I think rumination is more about past and present and about self. Worry, I guess, is more related to sort of linked with anxiety and about the future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I think about me as the anxious kid, the little 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 24-year-old, 25-year-old, before I kind of started to understand my mental health and get help. And for listeners who haven't sort of heard much about my story, it was only when I experienced a major depressive disorder that I went and saw somebody to say, hey, something's wrong. Up until that point, I guess I just thought that was just how everybody operated. And worry was just so consuming. And we know from the research, we know very clearly, and there were over 650,000 data points in the research I'm referencing, whereby people were given an app and asked, random times during the day over a period of time, what are you doing? What are you thinking about? How happy are you? And it's very, very clear when we're in the moment, even if we're doing the dishes or doing what we would consider a chore, and rumination takes us away, and worry takes us away, and it has such an impact on our quality of life, doesn't it? It can be so paralysing and sickening, can't it?
Yeah. I mean, I love this metaphor of a stage. And so if you think of your life on a stage, and everything that is connected with your life is on that stage. So your family, your pets, your house, your job, that also your hopes and your dreams, your thinking, your emotions, it's all on the stage. So when we ruminate, the spotlight is just shining on that thought or that event. And you know that when there's a stage, that spotlight is so powerful that everything else is blacked out. So it's like there's no perspective of your life. It's like your life is just that one spotlight. But what we can control with our spotlight of attention, which you mentioned earlier, is we do have that control to be flexible, to broaden the light so we can see that we are more than just this part of our life. And that's really important to know, because thinking flexibly, which is what this is about, because when you don't stretch and move and exercise, we can become really tight and tense and rigid. Well, that's the same with our mind. Our mind is capable of being flexible. We just have to work at it.
Yeah.
And that's when these tools and strategies come in. So we can take that spotlight of attention, and when we need to, we can broaden it. And we can see that, yes, this is happening and it's really painful, but there's also a whole lot of other stuff that's really, really important in our lives too.
Yes. And we all have the experience, don't we, of having our attention other than where, we would like it to be in the present. It's very easy for us to be on autopilot in the car, or to arrive at a destination having really kind of not thought probably as deeply about what we're doing as we would like to, or being in conversation with our kids but realise we're drifting to think about, what am I doing for dinner? Or I forgot to pick Vegemite up from the supermarket, or, just all sorts of things, because there's so much vying for our attention. And rumination's such a part of life, Carls. Why do we do it? It's got to serve a purpose.
Yeah, so this is so interesting. So there's an evolutionary psychologist. Now, I didn't even know they existed. I love looking at evolution and why we do things from a survival perspective, because it kind of does put it into context why we think the way we do and why we can struggle with it as well. So there's this evolutionary psychologist called Paul Andrews, and he hypothesized that the reason why we can go through periods of rumination is because having that time where we focus in our attention on a problem means that we can then sort of move out of that and come up with solutions. And from an evolutionary perspective, that means survival of the species. So that's an interesting one. But obviously now it's not about survival, and our rumination is not as helpful as that. But I think it's interesting, and to be curious about that, and to be curious about your rumination. If you're ruminating on one thing, to know that your mind is almost doing its job. It's like there's a problem there, and maybe it's something from the past that you don't have any control of, or maybe there's a nasty email that you got from a work colleague, and so you're ruminating about that, and so your mind wants you to come up with a solution, and so that's why it's going over and over and over again. I think that's important to understand.
I think so too, and I think it helps us to be a bit kinder to ourselves as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When I think about the alarm in the brain that sounds, and mine's so trigger happy, honestly. Honestly.
There it goes again.
Oh my goodness gracious me. My amygdala is, it's like very, very trigger happy. And I think that when I sort of can sort of think to myself, this is just my brain, it's detected a threat again. It's trying to keep me safe. I think that enables us to be kinder to ourselves, because, you know, if we're ruminating and then we're being hard on ourselves, or we're ruminating about ourselves, and why can't we just, you know, live like other people and think like other people, snap out of it, whereas we kind of don't know what's going on inside of other people's heads, and it's very common too. Maybe we can talk about that as well, but I think it helps us just to have more compassion with ourselves and to go, right, okay, this is normal, this is natural, everybody does it. It once upon a time served a purpose, but the threats, kind of, I'm using quotation marks, to our kind of survival now are, like you say, an email, or a run-in with a colleague, or an issue on the road, or something happening with our kids, or an aging parent, or just too much to do. And so this problem-solving kind of part of the mind goes to work, doesn't it? And does it help us solve the problem?
Well, I think it can. And I think it's important to know too that the way we respond to stresses in our life is different for everybody. And so much of it is based on our past experience. So I know that the challenges that I face when I do ruminate or I struggle, I know what they're linked to. Most of the time I do. I go, oh yeah, that's because this happened when I was a kid. And not to become a victim of that, but just to have more of an understanding. And as you say, that can mean that we're kinder to ourselves. It's like, yep, this is happening again. This is actually, I've been here before. And to have that sort of understanding can be really helpful. The other thing is, I find when I go through periods of rumination, I do become solution focused. And I guess this is the difference between rumination and reflective thinking. So I tend to go through a period of rumination, and then that kind of molds into reflective thinking, where I go, what do I need to do? What can I control in this situation? And I find sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it's a period of growth for me, because I come out the other end and I have solved whatever problem it is. It might not be the specific problem, but it might be something to do with my character, or what strengths do I have, or what weaknesses are involved for me in this, and sort of have that more introspective, reflective process to go, what can I do now?
Yes. I really appreciate that insight, because there is a difference, and there is power in moving our attention out of the moment. And when I opened with this idea that the research shows we are absolutely happiest, but of course it's really important for me to remind myself, and of course as listeners, we can't be happy all the time. And when we live a values-based life, things are going to happen that are going to challenge our life satisfaction, our happiness, how we feel, our regulation, our, how we cope. And so this idea that, yes, we are happiest when we're in the moment. We spend a lot of time out of the moment, and we could all do with sort of training our attention to sort of be more present, but be kind to ourselves when it drifts, as it always does. But this idea that when we are consciously reflecting on a situation to understand it better, then we can learn more about ourselves, or at least have more of an understanding about why we've reacted perhaps the way we did in the moment. And then there may be something that we could do differently next time. There may be nothing. There may be some self-compassion that we need to share, or just to have an acceptance that, well, this happened. I wish it had happened differently. It's out of my control now. Where can I put my attention next? Yeah. And so this conscious idea of reflective thinking, I love that you've brought that up, and that might have to be another episode. Yes. So thank you. And, you and I were off air this morning. I won't go into the details. But yeah, we were both reflecting on something that's both happened in our lives recently in a similar vein. And we were, in a vulnerable way, I was kind of sharing with Carly about something that happened that upset me. And Carly's like, oh, I've had a similar experience. And so, yeah, sometimes it's even really lovely just to sort of reflect on an experience, share it with someone. And you're so gorgeous and compassionate, and even to sort of say, hey, you know what, I've been there too.
Yeah, because so often we feel alone, especially with rumination when we're so stuck. It's like we're stuck on repeat in our minds, and then we think there's something wrong with us, and we do feel isolated. But actually talking about it to a friend or a health provider or someone who you trust, it can bring that sort of sense of common humanity, because we all struggle and we all suffer, and at different stages in our lives. And I think that's it's important to connect with people on that level, because it does help.
I couldn't agree more. And there are a lot of people listening who you might not be sure who to talk to, and I think it's really worthwhile to stop and think about who in your circle you can reach out to, because the support of other people is really powerful in our lives, whether we're struggling with rumination or any other challenges with our mental health, or just ups and downs. And a chance to have a good vent to a really nice listening ear is really powerful. So have a think. If you're not sure, just sort of bring to your attention who might be the person that you might reach out to next time. Because having a bit of time to reflect about who that might be when things aren't too stressful can be really helpful. Carls, can we dive straight in now to some tools and strategies, things that you might share with your clients when you're working with people who really struggle with this and need that extra help? But for listeners who would like to sort of go, yes, this is really affecting my life, what are some of the things that they might be able to start to put into practice?
Yeah, I think the umbrella tool that all other tools come into is really identifying what's within your control and what's not within your control. So Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, said that our lives are in two zones. Zone 1 are all the things we can control, and zone 2 are all the things we can't control. Now, I get my clients to write down whether it's about a specific thing they want to work on, or whether it's just life in general, like the weather. We can't control the weather, especially Melbourne weather. To write these down, and when it comes to the things that you cannot control, obviously we cannot control other people, and a lot of the time our rumination is about others and their behaviour, or what they've said or what they've done. And they are all things that are not within our control. We can certainly influence them. We can't control the past. We can't control memories. But the big one that I think some people get surprised at is, because maybe they've never thought about it, is your automatic thoughts and emotions are not within your control. So if you have these intrusive thoughts that are just popping into your head like a popcorn machine, you cannot control them. And I think that can be a relief for people, because we want to control them. We want to get rid of these thoughts. They're not, but we want rid of them so we can live our lives. And of course, that's what we want the agenda to be. It's like, why can't I get rid of these thoughts? But you keep struggling with that. You keep struggling and putting your attention onto something that's not within your control. It's like throwing fuel on the fire. They're just going to exasperate. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So the first tool underneath that umbrella is around self-distancing. And this is not a new thing. We're human, and we're humans from back in the Stoic, 2,000 years ago. They talk about overthinking, negative thinking, and self-distancing. It's just that now there's more science behind it, and there's a lot of science behind this self-distancing. And what this is is that it's when we can become the observer of our own thoughts. And Stanford University actually had a study that has linked this detached observer actually can result in less rumination over time. And there are a lot of ways that we can do this. One of the tools that I use is what we call the sage and gremlin. So the gremlin, we've got these different parts to us, okay? We're it's like having the little angel and the devil on your shoulders. We're always having a conversation with ourselves. And so we talk about the gremlin as that part of us that doesn't serve us well. So it's that part of us that has that critical thinking, is judgmental. It's important to know that our gremlin is not necessarily our enemy, because what it's trying to do is keep us safe. From an evolutionary point of view, we need to be safe. But this doesn't work well, because what it does is drags us back into our comfort zone, and we're not willing to step out of that comfort zone. So identifying the characteristics of the gremlin. What does the gremlin say to you? What does the gremlin suggest that you do? Things like mindless distraction of scrolling on social media. That might be the gremlin says, I know how you can take a break from all these ruminating thoughts. Just scroll on social media. And of course, short term, that might work for a short time, but they're just going to come back pretty much straight away. So a lot of short-term strategies from the gremlin. Yeah. Then you have your sage. So the sage is like the best version of you. It's your wise mind, the advisor. There's lots of words that we can use for the sage. And we all have strengths. We just need to tap into them. So it's about identifying what strengths do you need to get through this period of your time, or what strengths do you want to work more on. So it might be, you might identify your own strengths, but then you might go, well, actually, I really love Jodi's strength in compassion. I need more of that. And so you might look at somebody else. It could be, a friend, a superhero, a celebrity. It doesn't matter who it is. It's like, I want to work on that. And so what it does is it using that, you're focusing on what you can control. You can't control your gremlin. You will always have a gremlin. But what you don't want is your gremlin in the driver's seat, because whoever is driving the car, that's the direction you're going to go. Yeah. If you can get your sage in the driver's seat and boot the gremlin into the boot or the back seat and press the button and the security screen comes up. Security, you're in a limo.
See ya.
And you can still see it's like yabba yabba yabba, but you can't really hear. Yeah. So it's accepting the gremlin's always going to be, but not giving it the power, not giving it all your attention, and using your sage to really be your advisor of what do I need to do in this really difficult, painful situation? What do I need to do? And that's where you draw on that part of you.
I love the way you've described that, and we're both very passionate about acceptance and commitment therapy. Yes. And listeners will have heard me before talk about anxiety is my gremlin, but it's part, it's a portion of my gremlin. Maybe it's just the head. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I need to do some reflective thinking. There's more to my gremlin. There's a part of my gremlin that says, eat more muesli bars when you're hungry instead of making a salad sandwich
just
or making a salad.
Mine is have another glass of wine.
So we can. I think we're all going to be thinking a lot about what our gremlin is when our gremlin is in the driver's seat. Yeah, we're not being mindful about what we're doing, and so I love this metaphor and. I absolutely love it.
Do you know what it is? That's just reminded me when you said that. This is about living. It's about living an intentional life, but it's responding to your situation rather than reacting. Yes. So it's creating that self-distancing, is creating that bit of space between you and your thoughts, so you're able to observe them. And from afar, you're slightly detached. You can be more curious and more objective about your thoughts. And then that gives you control over your actions. Okay, what do I need to do now?
And when we get sort of lost in that spiral, we sometimes we just might be daydreaming, but we've drifted from, into sort of like, we've drifted away from the moment and our gremlin is in the driver's seat and we're choosing actions, or not really choosing actions, but we're acting in a way that's not in alignment with our values, like more muesli bars, more wine, scrolling on social media. So what can we do that can help us, number one, recognise that the gremlin's jumped in the driver's seat, and two, then separate and come back, sort of get that distance? Can you share a couple of ideas with us, please?
I think this is practice, for one. The more you practice this, the more you're able to recognise when the gremlin is trying to get into the driver's seat. You know, you want to kind of stop him beforehand. This isn't about leading a perfect life. Yeah. You know, your gremlin is always going to take over at some point, and then you can reflect and go, oh, yeah, okay, I recognise that. I recognise I reacted. I recognise that I was after a short-term relief here through whether it's scrolling on social media or drinking or drugs, or anything that gives you that short-term relief, but long-term it's not good for you. It's not leading you down that path that you want to go on. Yes. So practice, definitely writing down your gremlin and your sage, and really recognising the strengths that you have. That really helps to actually read it, because it's going to really mean more to you. And practicing when things are going well. Yeah. I think that's the key, is when things are going well, and recognising in ACT, I'm sure you probably talked about towards and away moves, because away moves are leading you away from the life that you want to live. They're more the gremlin. Towards moves, moving you towards the person that you want to be and how you want to live your life. That's when the sage comes in.
I really hadn't thought about the idea of writing it down, because the simple act of putting pen to paper, literally actually pen to paper, not typing it out, but because the way that we operate when we're writing is different to the way we operate when we're typing, and it helps to cement what we're doing a lot more. And we know this through the research of sort of revision and preparation for exams and the like. But when I stop and think about sort of personal examples, like this morning, I was up so early this morning, Carls, because I've got a couple of big things on my mind that are not stressful, but they're just big tasks I'd like to knock off today. And when I woke at 4:45 this morning, these tasks popped into my mind, and I thought, look, I couldn't go back to sleep. I thought I'd best get up. And I was doing one of these tasks, and then my little gremlin was like, oh, what's happening over on Insta? Oh, I wonder if there's been a new email. I mean, at 5 o'clock in the morning, seriously?
Well, that's what the gremlin does.
The gremlin is so persistent and very annoying. And I realise that, and I'm not alone in this, we're very easily distracted. We are being trained to be more easily distracted. If we spend a lot of time on our screens, for example, or even just the way media is created for us, it's constantly working to keep our attention. And so deep focused work and attention we do have to work at. And I noticed the urge to go and check my emails or jump on Insta, and I thought no. But do you know what? The one thing I didn't do was go a little pat on the back, because I think it's nice, isn't it, when we go, I noticed an urge, I didn't act on it. Yeah. Take that, gremlin. And I refocused, and this is all happening within the space of a couple of seconds. It wasn't really super conscious, but in this conversation now, I've reflected on that. And the more we can notice it's happening, recognise it, and then make a conscious choice, intentional choice, as you were saying. Brilliant. Do
you know, that's reminded me too. I just think that's amazing that you did that, because you were able to create that space between the urge and you responding. And that's where the power is. Yeah. That's where the power to choose is. And that's what we can control. You couldn't control the urge. It's like it's just automatic. Gremlin's there. Oh, go and check email, get a little dopamine hit.
Yes. Yeah.
But what you could control is how you responded to that. Yes. I love that. Yeah. Another tool that you've just reminded me is that with rumination, it can be so constant and so exhausting. And focusing on your external environment can be really important. So having external rituals, and I think this is how Oscar coped with this ritual of cleaning up the kitchen and the chocolate drawer in the fridge, is it's what he could control. Yes. And that helped him to get through this. So having a morning ritual where you say you have the rule in this ritual that you have no inputs. So you do not pick up your phone, you don't check your emails, you just have a period of time where you're easing into the day, whether this is journaling or exercising or or having a cup of coffee, a mindful cup of coffee, which is what I do, and just and have that time where there's none of these distractions that are coming in. That can really help. And also a night routine. So screens off an hour before bed, because we know that blue light affects our brains and affects and if you are really struggling with rumination, being on a screen for hours and hours is not going to help with that. So screens off and have that ritual of easing into the night, whether it's a bath, whether it's chatting with your family or reading a book. And so sticking to those can really help with how they talk about the morning starts the night before, so it can really set up your day well.
Yes, it can. The morning starts the night before. I've heard that before, but not for a long time. Thank you for reminding us. And I'm picturing at the moment, the kids are going to get some new routines at home. You know, this idea that, they kind of each have their own. Each have their own kind of routine, and strictly no phones in rooms, and phones off and away, charging sort of, early into the evening. But this idea of sort of having some ownership, and for us, I think that's something I'd like to write down for myself, because I really think it's a powerful reminder, isn't it? And if we do have young children or teenagers, for this idea of, well, how do you want to start the day? How do you want to end the day? This is what's healthy. They can have some agency over it if they want to read or have a bath or, whatever it is. But these practices help set us up for really flourishing mental health, for excellent sleep, which then helps reduce our reactivity, doesn't it, in terms of our emotions, and also sets us up to be as mindful as we can be during the day, because we're so driven by our biology when we're very tired, aren't we, that it's harder. We have to dig deeper, don't we, to sort of nudge that or elbow that gremlin out the way when we're really tired. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then the other tool there are many tools, but the other tool I really wanted to talk about was this physiology drives psychology and the power of exercise. There is no magic pill here. There's no magic pill that is going to get rid of the thoughts, whether it's ruminating or overthinking or worrying or whatever that is. But I tell you what, exercise is as close to the magic pill as you can get, as you would know, because given you're an exercise scientist. But I know that I run. Look, I don't run. I kind of...
You do run.
I shuffle.
Stop it. You run. You're a runner.
I jog. Okay, I'll jog. I'm very, very slow. But I do it for not only my fitness, but I do it for my mental health. I know if I go for a run in the morning, my ritual is I do a 2.5K run minimum.
Yes.
And that's what I do. And it sets me up for the day. If I do that, I know the difference. If I don't do the run, I can feel the difference in my mood, in my focus. It just has such a knock-on effect. And I ended up pushing myself the other week and did a 10K run.
You did overdo it though, didn't you?
I overdid it, and I hurt my foot, which then hurt my calf, and I haven't been able to run. And it's really affected me. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to get back into a bit of a routine. But you don't have to go out running. It can be a walk. It can be any sort of exercise, or going outside and just walking around the garden. But that is all going to be so good for clarity in our minds. But exercising just releases so many hormones. It has such an effect on our physiology, which is then going to have a knock-on effect to our focus, our mood and our thinking.
Thank you, Carls. Exercise is just such an incredible prescription for so much. To sum up, for somebody who's listening, who says, right, I've loved learning so much more about rumination. It's a problem for me. I'm aware that I'm doing it. Where would be a good place for somebody to start on this journey to putting in some practices that are going to make a difference, mindfulness practices, so that you're more aware and more able to kind of unhook from those ruminating thoughts and come back to the present? where might be a good place for somebody who's listening to start to say, right, okay, I need to do something. What could you suggest?
I would suggest from the moment you wake up and you put your feet onto the floor that you count your steps to the bathroom, you count your steps to the kitchen, and start being mindful of the pressure. You can feel the pressure of your feet against the floor. And what this is doing is taking your attention away from the thoughts and into the outside world. The other thing you can do is look for the colour blue. Again, if you don't want to use blue, you can have green, but yours and we're both in blue today.
Yes, we are. We're twinning today.
All things blue, something expansive blue, different shades of blue, small things blue. And then just practice that throughout the day, or using your senses. What can you hear? What can you see? What you can smell? That's a really good place to start, because everybody can do that. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to have a chunk of time to do it. But I would start there. And then you can start, maybe if you've got some time, to sit down and journal and go through your sage and your gremlin, just to bring increase that self-awareness, because this is all about awareness. If you don't have awareness of your own thinking and the different parts of you, and also an awareness of who you want to be and what's important to you, then you really don't have that compass, do you, to work with. So really increasing that awareness of yourself helps you to navigate the experiences that you're having and to navigate what you should do next.
Thank you. Oh, I don't want to stop, but I think we should. Carls, how can people work with you? There'll be listeners who are thinking, I'm going to try this, but also if I might need help, where can they contact you? How can they learn more about your work and work with you to support them to not only manage rumination and overthinking and big emotions and emotional regulation, but also I know so much of the work you do is about helping people step forward into the life that they really want to create for themselves. So tell us about you and where we can find you.
So you could go to my website, which is carlytaylorcoaching.com.au. I'm on Instagram, which is also Carly_Taylor_coaching. It's my work. My approach is, I use ACT, of course, acceptance commitment therapy, Japanese psychology, which is kind of the Eastern, what I would say is the Eastern kind of approach, very similar to ACT. And also, obviously with my master's in counselling as well. So I coach people, and I love that. My coaching's just slightly different, because a bit like a basketball coach, they teach skills.
Yes.
The players don't know the skills, they teach the skills. So that's what I do. There is definitely a period of understanding each other, putting the pieces of the puzzle of you together to have that sort of picture of where you want to go, and finding out who you are and how you want to live your life, and then looking at the tools and the strategies which are going to build and develop these skills that are going to help you go down that road.
Carly, you are just such a dream. Thank you for being such a beautiful guest. I'm very, very lucky to call you a friend. And what you've shared today is just going to make such a difference for listeners, and not only for listeners themselves as individuals, but for the people around them, because these are ideas that can be shared. And so I really want to thank you again for your time, and thank you so much for joining me here in the studio. It's just so great to have an actual real life person in the room rather than being on Zoom. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me, Jodi. I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed being in the studio, and always good to see you.
Oh, thanks, lovely. And if you found this helpful, please leave a star rating or a review. It really does help other people to find the podcast. Thanks so much for your company, and I cannot wait to be back again next week. Okay, bye. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review. To keep the conversation going, I'd love you to join me over on Instagram. You'll find me at Dr. Jodi Richardson. Also, if you'd like a copy of my free 5-day mini email course, Calm Your Anxious Brain, then jump over to my website, drjodirichardson.com, and you can sign up down the bottom. I've really enjoyed having your company. Thanks so much. See you next time.